wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello, and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto fan show. I am Mike Wait, no, I'm not Mike Newell. I'm very much Jeffrey P. Nesker, and guess what, sports fans? We're doing a bit of a chaos tonight. Look, Ma, no mics. Basically, just like the club we love, we're doing Next Man Up PC. In this case, PC is for podcast. Not that you asked, but I'm very much a Mac guy. Got you some great ringers here, guys. I'm joined today by Noel Allen from our sister show, The Tunnel Club, and our special guest, and kind of as a bit of an apology for Mikey Singh leaving him out of the TFC beat reporters deserve praise, not scorn, the G Money story rant from last week's show. We've got everyone's favorite OG TFC gumshoe, the man who wears many hats himself, Mr. James Grossi Esquire. We're going to spend the next hour or so breaking down everything that went right in Toronto FC's midweek demolition of CS Saint Laurent, and everything that went wrong in TFC's 4-3 loss at home to the defending supporter shield holders, WKRP, otherwise known as FC Cincinnati. So we're basically talking about the refereeing. Victor Rivas. We may also talk about the men's national team roster, but we probably won't. So without further ado, I welcome my co-host guest ringers, Noel. You saw me briefly at the game, and I realized I made a promise, me and my wife, to come back down for the second half and didn't. But to be fair, that place was packed. It was like blood feud after blood feud over assigned seats at the top of section 116. There were a lot of tears. There were a lot of security guards called into place. I think I told my wife, yeah, this should be general admission for at least 3 or 4 times during the ruckus. So, yeah. How was your? How'd you think the day was?
You know what? It was one of those. I was a little worried actually. Like 7:15, I looked around the stadium. I'm like, oh, it's quite empty. Like there's not many people in here. I'm like, it can't be that many people in the gangway behind. So yeah, it was very interesting to suddenly see everybody just kind of pile in at like 7:30 on the dot, and just kind of, I think we went from like 5,000 in the seats to almost 30,000 in the seats. It was kind of interesting.
Absolutely, it filled up fast.
Mm-hmm. People that were came in like 15 minutes after me. They were on this side of me. They were actually visiting from England, so it's like we seem to find English people. So it's pretty interesting. So they were like, "Where's our seats?" I'm like, "Just don't worry about it. Just stand here. You're good." And then they got the full Mike Newell experience in front of them. So it was a pretty good start. That's
Mike Newell sounds familiar.
Good read on Saturday.
Yeah, that dude sounds familiar, Mike Newell. I should definitely check that dude out. Is he on Twitter? Does he do a podcast? I'm not quite sure. How did it look up in the nosebleed / free catering section, Grossi? Did it? I mean, it kind of felt like we were back. Like it wasn't just hardcores there. It was a lot of like casual Toronto sports fans coming out to see a winning team.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get the full sensation of what a packed BMO field feels like from up there, but every so often I crack the window just to let myself experience and get a feel for what's going on in the stadium. And I think the standout moment for me was around the 75th minute when things kind of went off the rails and the game was getting super wild. The section in front of us, which is not particularly lively on most days, had one of those TFC arms up chants going all their own. So,
wow,
it's been interesting this year. I think it's fair to say the last couple of seasons have been pretty quiet in the building compared to some of the days we've experienced in the past. And on occasion this year, you start to feel it. I remember speaking to Oso after a game earlier this season and just sort of asking him, if it felt to him like BMO was back being what it was. And he said that he saw some signs of it, but I don't think the club is quite there yet. But, that said, it was interesting to see some former players on Twitter saying how much they enjoyed their time in Toronto and missed the atmosphere there when it's rocking. So I'm not going to go so far as to say the club is back quite yet, or that the stadium is quite what it was in the past, but it's definitely building there.
Okay, it looks like Noel can't hear anything, so just let me sort of multitask and tell him to log out and log back in. If you can't hear anything, I have to type it. So there it goes. Not to make too, I sort of wasn't paying attention to the last thing you said, but that being said, it was it was a cool game, and yeah, I definitely felt that sort of impression that TFC were kind of, for lack of a better word, back. That tweet was just the cherry on top, huh? Like, people ask me what Chris Mavinga's up to these days, and correct me if I'm wrong. He was released by the LA Galaxy ahead of this season, so he's so he's definitely Mr. Unaffiliated FC. So certainly take his proclamations of how much he loves playing at BMO with a bit of a grain of salt, because he's certainly a man without a club, man without a home right now. How's it going, Noel? Do you hear us, or is it the same old?
I got you back. Yeah, I got you back.
Amazing. You got to love the internet. That's fantastic. We were just sort of briefly talking about that little bit of tweet love between Mavinga and Josmer out there, and how nice it was. Little bit of a salve after what can only be described as a tough match. But gentlemen, I got to stop you there, because we had two matches this week, and we definitely would be remiss if we didn't talk about the midweek game, which, of course, for those that weren't paying attention, was TFC 8 and CS Saint Laurent 1. I'm going to open the floor. Who impressed? Who didn't? Grossi, you want to start there?
Oh, you got to go back and remember all those goals. Well, I mean, you got to start with DeAndre Kerr. I mean, he's a young man that's almost from the day that he was introduced to the first team, when Bob Bradley kind of said that it was DeAndre Kerr or Jason Russell-Rowe in terms of the guys that was going to stick around from the pool of strikers coming out of the academy. He's kind of had a big role thrust upon him at a really young age. And this is a guy that, we didn't see a ton of with TFC2. I'm not sure he ever made a single appearance for TFC2. He went the college route before coming back to Toronto. And so to see him sort of, I'm not going to call it a coming out party. We have to see what sort of comes from it in order to make a declaration like that. But to see him really feast the chances that were in front of him. He's like who's needed chances before he found in what we've seen from him over the past year and a half. But to see him be so clinical on the night and fill his boots and become the first TFC player to ever score 4 goals in a single match.
There it is.
I mean, what that does for a young man's confidence. He's a fun guy to talk to after the game, because you see what he does on the pitch, and he's young, but you can see a maturity in him and the way that he carries himself. But then when you speak to him, you're reminded that he's still a 20-year-old kid, and he's still growing into the demands of these roles. And the media part is a part that tends to come a little bit later for the guys than success on the field. So yeah, I gotta go with him for starters in terms of a guy who took that opportunity. And minutes have been few and far between with Prince doing what he's been doing with the first team, but he definitely reminded John that he's got some depth in that position.
Do you have anything to say to Noel's co-host Sean saying DeAndre needed that game? Do you think that it's that binary, and he absolutely did?
I think when it comes to strikers, like the cliche is always that they need to feel that feeling of the ball hitting the back of the net when it's been a while before they scored. And there's a certain confidence that the best strikers see. And we've seen that evolve with Prince, just to keep it to the TFC realm, where, touches that don't quite come off, or plays where you have the idea but you don't quite get there is you have to be so precise when you're a finisher in this game. The windows to score those goals are so small. And, I kind of joked with DeAndre after the game, did the ball just look massive when it was coming his way? Because every single touch was exactly the touch that was needed to take advantage of those opportunities. So, whether he needed it or not is hard to say, but it's definitely a game that he will be able to build off of, just given how much of striking and finishing is that confidence and belief in yourself.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you for didn't impress. Who impressed you, Noel? No, did we lose Noel again? Oh,
well,
no, there he is.
It was Kerr. I'll be honest. No, I'll be honest. It was Kerr for me too. I was actually in Vancouver on the dark side of the country, and so I was getting the notifications on my phone. I was in a meeting. I was actually presenting, and they kept popping up on my laptop there, which impressed my boss. And so I was like, "Hey, Kerr's having himself a day in the middle of a press conference." So that was pretty exciting. But no, I think for me, I'm a big Lucas Gavrin fan. I think he's done fantastic, and I think he played pretty decent. And I went back and watched the highlights, and me and Sean had this debate about a month ago. Like, could you trade Sean Johnson away this year with it being his last year of contract? I think you sign him up again for another year, and I think you keep developing Gavrin. I think that's just kind of been the form. So he really impressed me for me. Really liked him, and I think he's very consistent. And I have a very good feeling when he's in goal, and I still have the Alex Bono jitters every time somebody passes the ball backwards these days. Getting less and less with Sean Johnson, but with Gavrin in goal, I have a lot of confidence, a lot of faith. He'll be really top notch.
Awesome. I mean, I sort of have to go with Kerr again, but I would
say though,
sorry.
Do you think that Cincinnati's goalkeeper does look like?
Don't leave us hanging, Noel. I want to know what he looks like. Don't leave us hanging.
Oh, I'm back. He looks like Bono's little brother. How's that?
Indeed. Save the Cincy takes until we get there. I was impressed with Derek Etienne Jr., but I mean, bearing in mind that obviously Kerr and Gavrin are at the top of the table. I've been impressed with him since he's arrived. I think he's very goal dangerous. He's seems to be always in the right place. He's got a chemistry with the rest of the team that I did not expect at this limited amount of minutes. Who didn't impress? Let's go back to Mr. Grossi over there.
It's hard to say in an 8-1 win who didn't impress. I mean, it's there wasn't a whole lot to pick apart. There weren't a whole lot of disappointments in the game. I think this is a little bit unfair to him. He scored a goal on the day, but Cassius Mailula is a guy that I really want to see him grab these opportunities when he gets them. And we know that his minutes are going to be pretty few and far between. And John has said that, this might not be the season where we see a lot of Mailula on the pitch. And, I watched him play. He played very well in the first leg. I thought he was really dangerous. I thought he was dangerous against Simcoe County Rovers, or maybe I'm combining those two games together. And he looked good in those two matches. I saw him play a match for TFC2. And granted, it was on pretty short rest. He was on the bench on Saturday night and then played a TFC2 match on Sunday, and he was a little bit invisible. And so I'd like to, when a player is on the fringes of the squad and they know that those minutes are going to be rare, they really need to take advantage of those opportunities. And I thought on a night like that where he's playing in the middle of the park and you're playing against a lesser opponent, you want to see a guy like that really try and impose himself on the game. And I don't know that we quite saw enough of that from Cassius on the day.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you have anything to add to that? No?
No, I would agree with Cassius. I thought he looked pretty average. When you see Kerr banging in 4 and I think Cassius got 1, you kind of, you look at the pay disparity there and you just kind of look at the form. I think that's a good shot. Mabika terrifies me, honestly.
Yeah. Mabika's in a class of his own.
He's an accent weighted. Yeah, he's an accent weighted up.
Yeah. I just remembered he had the armband for a bit of that game, and that was scary. That was like multiplying scares. Just while you were talking specifically about cash money, do you think it's fair? I mean, obviously it's now becoming like a the copy's been written about what his deficiencies are, right? He's very, very small. He gets muscled off the ball. Doesn't have the physicality to stack up against what we consider to be sort of the average defender in MLS with the first team, which tends to be physicality first, athleticism first. But I think it's fair, obviously we're going into this saying he's up against a semi-pro team, but wouldn't you think that they would be even more aggressive on the defense, even more heavens to Betsy kind of thing? So do you think that that's maybe a false equivalency, and we're judging Cassius a bit unfairly in that regard?
Maybe if it wasn't an 8-1 game, but clearly on the night there were a lot of opportunities out there for attacking players to make things happen. And I think the physicality element, like he is a smaller guy, but I mean, to jump ahead to the Cincinnati game, that didn't stop Luciano Acosta from making his impression on that match. And so size isn't everything. Fair. I think, if I go back to what John said earlier this year when we talked to him about Cassius, it was about he's coming to a new kind of football, and as much as MLS and football around the world are the same game, every region plays their games very differently. And the thing with MLS is it's not so much the physicality as much as it's the athleticism and the dynamism. And there's guys who are athletes first and footballers second. And so for a guy who's coming in from the South African League, and I'm not super familiar with the kind of football that's played in South Africa, but I imagine it's a bit of a culture shock for him. And so, yeah, your point about Saint Laurent being, perhaps being, more physical or more aggressive, but I don't know that we necessarily saw that on the day. They were a pretty silky side, and
that's also fair, James. That's also fair.
Like the story of them playing as well as they did while losing 11-1 in the tie was a little bit funny to be in the press room afterwards, because the coach was disappointed, of course, but he was also fiercely proud. And John's first response in the press conference was about how well Saint Laurent showed. So, yeah, I wouldn't put it in that class of, scrappy lower division team comes in and tries to battle things out. They tried to play football with TFC, and hence the 8-1. I think.
I think that's very, very fair. Yeah. Go ahead. No,
I would just say, I would just say that they tried, right, and then you got undone. You can't discredit them for that. I think my only issue is with Cassius is, he's 20. Is he 22 now? 23?
I think he's 22 going on 23. Yeah.
Yeah. The development worries me. It does worry me. When you see Prince is kind of from where he was last season to where he is this season, Prince has moved forward, settled in, seems to become more accustomed. I just don't see that with Cassius. I just don't see it. I like the guy. I like his personality. You can clearly see the players like him. And when they were shoving him in front of the South End there the other week, it was cute. I think it was almost borderline bullying him, but they were really trying to get him in there and get him out to the crowd, right? And I just, he's got that personality that you kind of like and you want to be drawn to. You just haven't seen enough. And as James pointed out, if at one point, I think I looked at Sean in the stand and said, hey, look at that. And Insigne and Acosta had their arms around each other. And I'm like, there's two guys that I'm definitely taller than. And, I don't think the size has ever been an issue, right? I just think you've got to get used to how physical MLS is. I think Insigne struggled with how physical it was last year. So maybe that's fair. A part of it too. But he's also, if you look at him, he's quite stacked. He's got quite a good upper body strength. He's not a small framed guy. So I'm just curious where the development is. And, can we afford to sit him for a year and teach him what MLS is? Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But I just think he would be further ahead than he is right now, because he doesn't look. We needed a goal on Saturday night, and he didn't come off the bench. That's always going to be my, tell if they've got faith in him.
That's also fair. But let me just, Tertz put it right there in sharp relief, right? 3 starts, 2 goals, 1 assist. On paper, that's nothing to sniff about, right? It's just here, in detail land where we have more than just the stats to look at. We're finding him lacking, but if you just had that to go on, that's not a bad showing for the amount of minutes that Cash Money has has occupied for TFC, right? So, I mean, I don't know. We held on, we just got rid of Jordan Peruzza. We seem to be raising the floor of this club. The TFC of a year ago, I would say, would hold on to Cash Money forever, but the TFC of now, I'm not so sure. So I don't know. I don't know where we end up, but I take some comfort in the fact that our man Grossi here is giving us a bit of inside baseball that Herdman has said, they see a future with Cash Money, because I was under the impression that nobody saw any future, and it was just only a matter of time. Getting to where I wasn't impressed. There's something going around the internet, and I did mention this to Grossi before we started. People are saying with respect to Lorenzo starting that game, already being up however many goals, and they were excusing it. Like I saw his name on the team sheet starting, and I'm fully aware that he needs, to get his feet underneath him, and he needs time on the pitch and all of that other fun stuff. But if that is a hell of a bet. I mean, he's made of glass, and if he goes down playing against CS Saint Laurent in a cup game with another hamstring injury, we are screaming bloody murder. We have our pitchforks out. So I don't, I don't like this idea that was their training, right? Like, they didn't get a training session because we had a midweek game. So putting Lorenzo out there for 30 minutes was his training session. Beyond that, I thought he was anonymous for his spell in that game. Absolutely anonymous. So he didn't impress very much, with respect. That was, at the end of the day, it was a semi-pro team. And, he probably should have scored. Lorenzo Insigne probably should have scored 18 goals before he was brought off in the 30-minute mark. I realize I've just opened up Pandora's box, so I'll give you both opportunities to comment on that. Let's start with you, Noel.
So I think you got to give him minutes to get him up to speed, right? I think you just got to give him, even if they're ugly minutes against, a semi-pro team, I think you just still got to give him some time to run around. It's, we'll maybe touch on it later, but, no different than Richie going to go and join Canada. If they give him 30 minutes, I'm not overly thrilled about it, right? But again, as somebody pointed out today, it's 30 minutes where you can get some physical game contact and get up to speed faster, then it might be a good thing. So, every time we play them, they're a risk, because at the end of the day, we know how much our DPs have been missing over the last 5 years, right? I think I tweet that stat more than anybody else. We are number one in MLS for not having DPs playing. So I'm always a little bit more cautious, but I do feel that, a competitive game, a few minutes under his belt, yeah, he probably should show better. Maybe the motivation's not there, but hey, you know what? He turned up on Saturday and he turned up against Montreal, so I'll give him a pass on that one.
Do you make that correlation? Turtz makes that correlation. They just said it out loud. His 30 minutes against CS Saint Laurent allowed him to play 101 minutes on Saturday. I don't know if I agree with that. All right, let's. Since I don't agree with you, I'm shutting you up. Let's talk to Grossi now. What do you think about all that?
Yeah. I mean, coming, maybe if we were in a part of the season where the games were spread out a little bit more, and you had that little bit more time on the training pitch to really test a guy out, maybe you don't go for that option. But this schedule that the team's in the middle of, this 9 games in 33 days or whatever it is, they're hardly getting the chance to get out on that training pitch and really break a sweat, just the way that they're going through regen and recovery in between matches. And so, yeah, I don't have any qualms with him starting that match. The 30-minute cap was a little bit, we didn't know about it ahead of time. So you see Lorenzo going off at 30 minutes, and you're wondering, oh no, are we going to have to write another story about it? He picked up a knock, and I do think that the way that you build players up to be 90 or 101 minutes ready is by throwing them into those games. And yeah, maybe it would have been good to see him take that game by the scruff of its neck a little bit more, but I don't think that was the assignment on the day.
Okay.
I think what we've learned from Lorenzo over this past, 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever it's been, is he's a guy that, finds his level finds the highest level when the games are the biggest games. You know, there haven't been a ton of big games over the past couple of years, but you know, think about that game against Charlotte, the 4-0 game when him and Fed debuts. That was a big moment because it was his first game in Toronto, and he was fit and he was ready to go and he was dangerous. And the Cincinnati game was up there with. We've seen some really strong performances from him. We've seen, you know, the game stealing goals he had earlier in the season where he had moments, but
Oh yeah.
you know, I would put that second half up there with the best 45 minutes that we've probably seen from him. He was dangerous, and yeah, you can't get that from having a light jog and running through the tactical sessions for what the next opponent's going to look like. So yeah, it might not have been the 30 minutes that we'll all be writing about were signature Lorenzo Insigne moments, but those are the unhighlights that allow you to have the bigger highlights. So yeah, it was.
I like that take. I like that take a lot. But it sort of leads into my next question. Like, it's kind of par for the course with Herdman, hey? Like, we're getting to know Herdman as a club coach, not an international coach, right? So, and I can't remember the last time, if there was ever a time. I think we just lost Grossi again. He's just spinning his camera a bit because the light's coming in pretty hard on him there. I can't remember. I mean, just to simplify, we have to. I think we need to start expecting this from Herdman, and this is my question, kind of leading into it. Was it a heel turn to go that hard for that scoring record, and sub that aggressively? And it begins with the Lorenzo 30-minute cameo, and it sort of continues to like the Berna sub, the Prince Owosu sub, you know, the rotating cast of characters was, you know, obviously records were made, you know, and obviously I love that I've got the stupid thing on and I haven't turned it off. So when you do this, it gives you an emoji, but obviously, you know, was it like, I guess my question is, was it a heel turn? How do we feel about it? You know, we got the record, but was it, you know, I guess I still need to get used to this, like the Herdman effect, because he's the kind of guy that's going to sub that aggressively in so-called nothing burger midweek cup games, right? And I guess, how do you feel about that sort of aggressive game plan? Anybody?
You know,
anybody want to take that one?
Aggressive. I don't mind the aggressive. Hey, can you hear me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind the aggressive nature. I think you got to go for it and try and finish teams when you can. And I think, you know, he's just giving everyone a bit of minutes.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Grossi? I mean, we don't
just,
Bob Bradley never subbed.
The record.
Like,
well, I mean, like the record thing is the way John's explained it is the risk in these games is that, you know, you sort of take your eye off the ball and you fall a little bit asleep and you don't bring the required intensity to the game. And so by putting an immediate goal, whether that's, you know, 7 goals against Simcoe County or whether that's breaking a record or DeAndre Kerr scoring 4, by putting those little goals, that's a big part of how Herdman goes about things. He did the same thing with Canada where, you know, when they would go down to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's not about winning the game because you're expected to win the game. It's about finding something that's going to push the group to a higher level of performance and really focus them in on that. And I think for me, what I've seen, like between the Saint Laurent game and the Montreal game, we're seeing a confidence building in the side. And I think that confidence, one of the ways that Herdman ladders that is you set a goal and you achieve the goal. And then you know that you can have a target and you can reach the target. And then the next time you move that target a little bit higher. And so I've been thinking this week about, do we have, comparing the performance down in Cincinnati in February, where it was a little bit, you know, survive the 90 minutes, hold tight, don't give a lot away, versus they come to Toronto 4 months later, 3 months later, whatever it is, and it's a bit more of an, okay, we're not surviving you anymore. We're going toe to toe with you guys. We're going to try and play with you guys, and you don't make that jump from being a team that was as fragile as they were last year to being a team that can hang in games with the best teams in the league just by snapping your fingers. And you do that by setting those little goals and proving to yourself you can do it, and then going out and doing it again. And so, yeah, it's a little unsightly. You know, you don't want to be beaten up on teams like that. But I think, you know, just being in the press conference afterwards, the Saint Laurent coach took it as a mark of pride that they treated the game with respect, and that, you know, the score is ugly, but it also means that Toronto wasn't going to let up on them one bit. And so, you know, outside we can look at that and say, like, oh, you know, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Do we need a mercy rule or however we want to do it? But, you know, this isn't child's t-ball where we're looking after everybody's feeling. This is about teams going out there and giving their all. And yeah, in one way you can see that was the sign of respect, that we're not just going to beat you, but we're going to continue to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron basically echoes your statement. More disrespectful to ease off, honestly, and I think that there's an argument for that. 100%. You're not showing the team respect. You're babying them. You know, they don't like that, and that leads into the shirt swap. I mean, Fede's shirt swap there, which, you know, became a lesson in the economics of the kit man's budget at the League One Ontario, or the League One Quebec level. That was pretty fun. That was a pretty fun little moment there, and nice to see that the club jumped at the occasion and rectified it all out there. It was all. I mean, there's not much to say at the end of the day. It was an 8-1 victory. It was vibes. It was a fun day out at BMO Field. You know, Sean even writes easing off actually has more of an injury risk than not going 100, which I would also agree with. I guess for me, it's just getting used to the John Herdman effect. You know, it's not just about celebrating these little victories, but it's also about being okay with kind of living in that gray area morally, where you're like slightly unsportsmanlike, but also you bring a sword to the locker room. You know what I mean? Like you know, so I guess it's just it's a me problem. Speaking of John Herdman, I guess
right? You've got to have a winning culture, I think, right? And I think you've got to create that appetite for the game. I think that's what we've lacked for the last 3 or 4 years, where we've just been going through the motions. And I think if you watch it from the stands, we've gone through the motions. It's nice to see them. Yeah, it's different beating up on a thingy. I much more enjoyed beating up on Montreal. I thought that was far more entertaining than beating up on Saint Laurent.
Well, yeah,
you've got to have, you've got to have those games where you got to go through, and you know, they weren't disrespectful. They weren't over showboating. They weren't celebrating like they. You know, it's not like the women's US team from a few years ago where they're running around like they won the World Cup after beating Thailand.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. We never went that far into the heel turn, right? That's the gold standard. So yeah.
You just the players behaved with class, and you know what, you got to give them credit for that, right? And then, you know, Saint Laurent still went till the end, right? They're down 8 and they scored, right? So you know, I think it's just respectful, you know. But again, you can only beat who's in front of you. Is, you know, the best way to look at it.
Yeah, and better to get 8 goals than 7 goals. So yeah, I agree. It's just, you know, there's a lot of people in the chat that are saying, you know, we were flat track bullies and this and that and so on. But I have to say, I think the knock-on effect on team morale is kind of worth taking a few knocks from the people that are going to call out breaking gentlemen's rules of the sport. So I'm kind of on side here, but I still have I'm still trying to get the bad taste out of my mouth. Anyway, you're going to break it up. We're going to break up our 2 game reports with a little bit of my favorite segment, Heard's the Word. So here we go, fellas.
Can I see that paper for a sec? Huh, that's odd. What are you talking about? Oh, have you not heard? Heard what? Heard the word. Heard the word. Don't you know about the herd? Surfing!
Anything can happen in football these days.
This is like a play setting. This is an amuse-bouche, because here's the gaffer basically minutes after that wild ride that was FC Cincinnati versus TFC at the weekend. Just to bring us into that mindset, just to get us back into that zeitgeist. Here he is, fresh off.
Yeah, loved it. Just loved the passion, the spirit from both teams. 2 teams that wanted to win. Exciting game. I mean, as a coach, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that football match, just seeing the lads give everything, to good teams going after each other. A lot of quality players on the pitch showing their quality, and just a hell of a game. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but no points. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us catch Cincinnati.
I'm pretty sure that every one of us had that monologue at our seats when the final whistle blew. So it's very interesting to see the gaffer sort of working through that stuff. I mean, the lads left it all out there. He had nothing left. He was exhausted in that press conference. Like he was just about finished. So that's my pick for Heard's the Word. Let's do it, boys. Let's get into it. 3 TFC, 4 FC Cincinnati, a game that just about had everything. It had a commentator team that weren't homers that pissed us off. It had refereeing that I guess was refereeing. It had a lot of new faces. It had blood feuds over assigned seating at the top of section 116. It had cards. It had goals. It had short people. It had tall people. It had the gamut. So, guys, let's go. Vibe check. How are we feeling after that match? Positive, negative, like treading water? It's been a couple days. I think we were all kind of mollywopped after that match because the expectation, I don't think anybody expected it to be the track meet that it ended up being. So what are our vibes? James, I'll start with you.
I had to go to a wedding after that game, so
no.
it was a good night. I'll put it that way.
Nice.
I skipped out on the first half of the wedding because there's only so many work days that we get as soccer reporters, and nobody ever plans their weddings on Tuesday nights, which is a bit unfortunate for me. But it was. I think if I go back to the vibes that we were talking about in terms of what BMO Field felt like, it felt a little bit like a game that we're going to be talking about for a while, and I don't think that we've had many games like that over the past couple of years where yes, there were innumerable storylines and there was little bits of controversy and a little bit of, what if this, what if that. There were good moments, there were bad moments as you ran through. And so
it was the best of time. It was the blurst of times.
It is. I think it's going to be a game that we're going to be able to reference for wherever it is that the rest of this journey that the team is on. It was a night that I think they've been building towards in terms of how they've gone about games. And, if we go all the way back to when Herdman came on as the first team staff, he called out Cincinnati as a franchise or as a club that has done things right. That's done things right.
Which was mind-boggling. I mean, I still can't forget the 3 straight wooden shields, but yeah, like absolutely.
Well, I mean, I think that goes to prove just how hard it is to get all the ducks moving in the right direction when it comes to finding success in this league. And so, when John and his staff came on board, it was a club that they spent a good chunk of time looking at how they've gone about doing things and looking at, how they went about building their roster and assets that they've looked to use. And so I think it was a night that, we'll talk about it more in terms of the good, the bad, the ugly, all that sort of thing. But it was a night that we're going to be looking back on as this season goes on, as this team continues to build. One of the things that's been interesting this year is John hasn't been afraid of throwing out that term championship team and using it as a sort of, it's almost an adjective in terms of like a team that is capable of being a championship team rather than the team who actually won the championship. And so, one of some of our earliest conversations, he's put that out there as what the goal was for this team. And it's not something that's going to happen 16 games into a season. It's not something that might even happen this year. The goal this year is just simply to reach the playoffs, and anything after that is sort of gravy. But you don't get a ton of nights in MLS where you're really pushing yourself to see, okay, can we hang with the best teams in this league? And so it was a night that as much as the side was disappointed, as John said, it doesn't help them in the standings. It'll be a night that they'll take a lot from, and that I think will be a big reference point both for them and for us going forward.
I love the language, but it fills me with dread because this was a so close but no cigar, right? I think that, and I don't think we can deny that. So if it is our season in micro, I don't like how that bodes for the future, right? And I wonder how much stock you want to put in it as that motivational factor with the asterisk, that tag of, we were so close, but not quite there. Again, this is all gravy to me. I never anticipated we were getting into the playoffs. So the fact that we're even in the hunt is obscenely unreal for me right now. But I'm just worried, because I don't think it's a moral victory. Aaron just said, I'm so tired of moral victories. I think it's being framed as a moral victory, and I appreciate this desire to sort of contextualize it and give it more shape. And I agree with you. Going in, it felt epochal, and certainly Herdman was giving us all signs point to yes. I just get a little tinge of, I get a bit of the fear talking about it as defining our season moving forward, because that does sort of bode a little strange for the future. Noel, you've been very good, very quiet, waiting there with your notes to step in. So I open the floor to you.
It is a reference point, because at the end of the day, our record is 7-1-7, right? And I think, we mentioned this on the Tunnel Club. In previous games, we've got away with some mistakes. We've got away with some plays that kind of like against a good team, you're going to get punished. I think they needed that game, because you never want to lose, but you kind of want to have those moments where you take that and learn from that. And I don't think, sometimes we're too delicate around the box. One thing I like about Kevin Long is, if in doubt, put it out, and he puts it into a run set. It's a very basic thing.
Hoof it.
I know your boy Coelho likes to dance around on the edge of the box, and he terrifies me. Simple ball, simple football, right? I think you need those.
That word doesn't exist in the Spanish midfielder's vocabulary. It's tiki-taka or nothing. Yeah,
exactly. But you get punished for those mistakes against big teams. You needed a game against a team that is up there in the league, that is going to challenge, that is going to be around at the end of the season, and you need to understand that those mistakes against a guy like Luciano Costa are going to cost you. And you need to have that.
That was very alliterative. You're almost a poet there. The mistakes against Acosta are going to cost you. You should trademark that. Yeah, it's going to cost you.
That's what happens.
Acosta.
But it does happen, right? That's the thing for me. Like we got punished for some sloppy mistakes, and Sean said it in the chat earlier. Look, our defending was horrible. At times it was. We were a little bit caught up in a lot of things. But I also thought you got an impact of Davy Flores comes out, and I think Luciano Costa had a field day. And I think that gives you a value on his positioning. It gives you an understanding of where we are as a club. And, we seem to be boom or bust. We're winning or we're losing. We're not drawing. And if you take the teams that are drawing, pretty much, if you look at the league table, I think there's 3 teams with 1 draw, and we're one of them. The other 2 teams are bottom of the league and third from bottom. So you just got to take some of those defeats and turn them into draws. And it just, get those points to move back up the table and stay in contention, and then you can push. But, at the end of the day, I was irritated. I was annoyed. The referee annoyed me. I was annoyed at the sloppy mistakes, because it was there to be taken, and we made some mistakes that we haven't, really seen from this team a lot. But, we've got away with a few over the course of the season, and then, their quality just shows through. So, it is what it is, and it is a learning lesson. It's not a moral victory. I think it's just a defeat that had some high points and gives us a good reference of where we truly are. And we probably are about 4th to 6th best in the league right now in the Eastern Conference.
I don't disagree with that. What I do,
not bottom.
When you were last year, 100%. But what I take issue with is this idea of mistakes. I don't deny that mistakes were made, but I wonder how much, in the same way as when a striker scores a goal or we get a good passage of play, how repeatable is that, right? This idea that we can learn from these mistakes, how repeatable is that? Because to me, we lost him again. This is my favorite. Hosting has been amazing. To me, I'm not sure where questionable refereeing ends and mistakes made by our defense begin. Because there was no consistency in terms of playing advantage. There was no consistency in terms of what calls gets whistled down, who gets called for what. I know, Noel, you've talked about this a lot on the Tunnel Club, so I'm going to let you follow James. My question is, I'm just going to be basic, refereeing or defending?
I've given up trying to understand what a foul is in any particular context. It's what a foul is, what a penalty kick is. It to me is, I've sort of had to accept that it is what the referee decides it is in the moment, and sort of give up the hope that you're going to see a game where there's a standard set and that standard is kept throughout the whole game. And I'm the pool reporter right now, so it's my responsibility to send some questions down to the referee's dressing room and hopefully get some clarity. And as much as it's a worthwhile exercise that we tend to take advantage of, you sort of know you're not really going to get answers because the foul is what the referee decides the foul is on the night. And so I'd put that aside a little bit and just go back to something that Herdman said in the post-game press conference. And he made a point of saying that TFC doesn't control the outcome, that you don't control the result. Like there's going to be factors that are out of your control that you're going to have to deal with on any night. And refereeing is always one of those things that are a little bit out of your control. And the unsaid part that he was alluding to there is that you don't control the outcome, you don't control the results, but all that you can control is what you put into the equation. And so it was a night where there were a couple of decisions, like let's take the Tyrese Spicer, the shoulder in the back of Tyrese Spicer. He goes down, Orellano is in alone. I've seen that called a foul a million times just because there are some referees who, if it looks like a team gets a goal scoring chance from something that is 30% of a foul on the day, just blows the whistle because it's the same.
100%.
I've also seen those not given. Orellano sort of got the angle on Spicer where it wasn't straight in the back. He sort of got his shoulder a little bit in front of him, and maybe that's a clean play. It's one of those things that the referee will make that decision. And so I'm with John in the sense that you can't control that part of it. So don't even worry too much about it. Just worry about what you put into it and what you can control on the night. I sort of forget where we started with this, but I think what I would say is that it was a night where Toronto, the mistakes were present, and there are mistakes that they've made several times throughout the course of the season. We've seen moments where the concentration is lax, and you get away with it on some nights and you don't get away with it on some nights. And so I think that's an important reminder for the side that when you are, as you said, Noel, when you're playing against a top team, if you keep making those same mistakes, if you switch off for a moment, if you lose a man or you track a man or you don't pick up Acosta and you give him those couple of yards of space, or you commit to a challenge and don't win the ball pops loose and somebody's unmarked, those are lessons that you only get when you're playing against the best teams in the league. And so it's part of the building process for this, and it's not a moral victory. It's not a game that will define the season, but it's a result that you can take the good parts. And I think the way that we were framing it going in was it's a measuring stick. You can see where you stand.
100%.
You can see how much you've grown in the 5 months of the season to date, and you can see how much farther you still have to go. And so the refereeing on any given night in MLS can be, I think generally on the whole, it's improved over the last 5, 6, 7 years compared to some of the stuff that I recall from 10 years ago. I remember.
Yikes! Yeah, then I've just forgotten it completely because I think that's the worst officiating I've ever seen in an MLS game ever, just because it was so maddeningly inconsistent.
Yeah, no, there's been a few. There's been a few worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alan Chapman for sure.
Anytime Alan Chapman's there, but no,
and Ted Uncle, the two guys that should never come back to Toronto. But I mean, Victor's on that list. Before I give it up to you, is it as simple as just saying play to the whistle? Because I mean, I'm a little disenfranchised by the fact that everybody's so cynical that they're like, well, we can't expect any consistency in a ref, so forget about it. We're just going to do something else. It's like, isn't that like the basic standard we should expect? But I also dig it because MLS is chaos, just like this podcast tonight. And you got to accept the chaos. But all I'm seeing is we can learn lessons, but it was also chaos. So I'm having trouble bringing those two poles together, right? Like, what lesson can you learn from chaos if not play to the whistle always, right? And is it as simple as that? Never give up on a play until you hear that whistle, sort of thing. Is that the pat lesson that you can give out there? No, I'm going to let you just jump in and say whatever the hell you want to say.
So the consistent is the inconsistent referees, because that's what they are, right? And that to answer your question, was it the defending out or was it the referee? It is a combination of both. Ultimately, there's a couple of those calls where you just, at one point the referee counts off on his hand 1, 2, 3, 4 to the Cincinnati player and says no more. And then 30 seconds later, somebody on CFC gets a yellow card for the first one. And then they go over and they're going like this. And the referee's like, no, doesn't want to hear it. So you're like, huh? Like, it's just the stunning amount of inconsistency in his performance. It's the same as Long throwing the ball away, and then they've got somebody time wasting by falling on the floor, running over, stopping the free kick from being taken. There was a lot of those things where I said to somebody that was next to me, when was the last time you actually saw somebody in MLS booked for time wasting, for throwing the ball, for kicking the ball away? Every week it happens where it goes unpunished. But on that day,
and it's supposed to be targeted. Like, they put out an all points bulletin and they told us as fans that these were the sort of things that they were addressing. Like, we got 18 articles from MLS HQ about how upset Messi was about being, subjected to the new anti-time wasting rules. Anyway.
Well, that's the thing. And it's like you come out with all these rules and all these things that we're going to target and we're going to focus on, and we got away from half of them. And I was saying this on the Tunnel Club. At the end of the first half, there was, what looked like a handball, and he blew the whistle, didn't even go to check. So I don't know who it was or it wasn't, but neither the point. It's just the fact is we have these processes with the referees, and they just seem to be on their own agenda. And I think there's 2 or 3 times this year where you've kind of sat there and gone, I have no idea what a penalty is. I have no idea what a foul is, and I certainly do not know what a yellow card is. As I mentioned on the Tunnel Club this week, my biggest thing with TFC this weekend with the refs is we got to stop charging up to them. We're going to just keep racking up these yellow cards.
Yeah, I've got a
big world of hurt from that. We've got I like the aggression. We've got to back off it because, Sean was, I mentioned this, he was very animated when Insigne was being chased by the referee. When was the last time you saw a referee chase a player through a crowd to just argue with him after Insigne was like, I'm done, and walked away? It's, it's almost comical.
It was a bit main character symptom. Yeah. It's not about you.
Always my issue. My issue with MLS referees is that on any given day, some of them look and appear like they want to be the center of attention in the game, and they get to be the center of attention because we aren't talking about TFC's mistakes. We're talking about Rivas. The fact is, when they put the names up at the start of the game, my kids now know, oh God, my dad's going to be complaining about this referee. It's generally
I know what I'm getting you for your birthday. I'm getting you an Alan Chapman Macron jersey or whatever, and you're going to have to wear it, and it's going to be itchy. It's going to be made out of like a burlap sack.
Ted
I forget,
Ted Uncle's my worst.
Yeah, Ted Uncle is the worst ever. I gotta throw this out, and I'm gonna let both of you go there. Is it not bad game planning? Right? We know we have enough tape to know that Cincy tend to crowd refs and get calls in their favor, and it's not a homer thing. It's league wide. We know this, right? So shouldn't have TFC, like, of all the games to not play to the whistle, this is the most play to the whistle-y of the games to play to the whistle, right? So isn't it doubly bad that TFC had those lapses of confidence against this team in particular, and doesn't that point to like an even deeper structural imbalance in terms of giving up on plays and potentially letting soft goals in? I'll let you start, Grossi.
Yeah, I don't know how to go about that one. I think if we go back to what we were talking about with Lorenzo in terms of stepping up in the biggest games, like your concentration is important every second that you're out on the pitch. But when the games get a little bit crazier, that's when it demands a little bit more. And when the other team is asking more questions of you, or when you're so involved and so intense in how you go about everything on the night, sometimes your attention elsewhere is going to drift. And so for me, like, yeah, it's disappointing to see little moments like that fall short, but that's all part of the building process that we've been talking about on this journey is when was the last time Toronto was in a game to push into the top 3 of the Eastern Conference and playing against the defending Supporters Shield champs and really giving them like the muscle memory for those moments just isn't there, and that's all part of
that's so
the
fair.
Same with getting the 30 minutes against Saint Laurent for Lorenzo. You got to build that up. And we haven't seen a ton of big games. Like I was just looking over the schedule. How many of these games have been real sort of, maybe the Vancouver game where they lost 4-0 was a bit of a hyped up game. The other Canadian derby, the game against Montreal, can't really say that the Canadian Championship have really been like high profile, big question ask games. First couple games were, but they were very much bunker on the road kind of games. And so this for me, just looking at the schedule I have up on my wall, is probably, aside from maybe the 2 at NYCFC, probably one of the biggest games that this team has faced as a group together. So, yeah, it's disappointing to see little moments of inattention like that, but it's kind of to be expected at this point in where this club's cycle is.
I agree. Do you have anything to add to that, Noel?
Yeah, I would just say though, like you've got to we need to be more disciplined, but we need to control the aggression. And I'm big on the aggression. I like the aggression. I like the fight. I like them to just not give up and give in to these teams, because teams now know that they're going to get a fight and a scrap, and they're coming to bring their A game because we're not a pushover anymore. I like the fight. And at the end of the day, I don't want to see them just give in to teams like this. I want them because, let's be honest, 2017, we were like that to everybody. We bullied a lot of teams. The reason we get trashed on Apple TV is because Sasha Kleshin, was in the tunnel getting the beat down the last time. So when he's on about
Josie had him in his pocket. Yep.
Exactly. And, we are Toronto. This is who we are. This is what to expect. And I like the fight. I just need it just to be a little bit more controlled. But you've got to be in those games to have it a controlled environment, right? So, I'm okay with it.
I feel like Grossi's mad at me, like he's just mean mugging us in that little frozen screen cap there, and it's like Mona Lisa. He looks like he's about to start laughing or yell at us, and I'm not sure. And it's just this huge pregnant pause. Lorenzo Insigne, was that his best game?
Ooh. For 90 minutes, yes, because I don't know how many times he's played 90 minutes. But yeah, I don't know. Has he?
He's back.
I would say it's probably one of his best games for us, because at the end of the day, like he looked like a man on a mission. If that one where he hit the top of the bar had gone in, I think that would have taken the roof off the building. Yeah,
agreed. I didn't think he was offside, but I'm a homer, and we were like so far beyond that play in the south end. He was offside. If that screamer had gone in, that 40-yard absolute screamer, it's a different game. I mean, obviously he earns a spot on the team of the week. I think possibly that was his best game. Certainly it's among the better performances we've seen going the entire run of play. I think is really important. My last point on this game. Do you think Berna and this filters in?
9 minutes came from? Was it going to be where the 9 minutes came from? Was it going to be where the 9 minutes extra came from?
No, it was going to be could Berna have been the difference? I'm through talking about Victor. We've given him way too much airtime already. He's going to think we like him, and it's very much the opposite. So, could Berna have been the difference there, or is that just wishful thinking? Grossi, let's go to you.
That's
Okay, no, let's go to you first while we wait for Grossi's internet to recover.
You know what? I think, if Ben is on that, I think we win that game. I do genuinely believe that. I just think some of the chances we had in the first half to make it 2-0. I think if we make it 2-0, it's over. But we didn't take our chances in that first half, and then we got punished straight after the second half. So I think if Berna's in the game, I think he, takes up better positions. I think there's a couple of opportunities where would be in on goal a little bit different, because I think, Cincinnati were wide open in that first half. I think we could have scored a couple. I think that game would have been dead. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, I don't like speaking binary like that. Oh my God, I got two different versions of Grossi here. Let me boot this one. Okay, there we go. This is fun. Just organizing everybody. All right. Answer the question. Do you think Berna would have saved us? Do you think Berna would have gotten us the 3 points?
Potentially. I think for me, what it tells us is that, as much as you can be disappointed that measuring stick fell short in the end, this was something that Fede said when we talked to him after his big night against Montreal, the hat trick night, was that we haven't seen this whole team together since that opening day game against Cincinnati. We haven't seen Richie on the pitch. We haven't seen a fit Fede. We haven't seen a fit Lorenzo. We still don't know what this team looks like when they have all their pieces together, let alone when they're all sort of firing at the same time. So would Fede have made a difference? I think yes, in the sense that we saw what not having him out there meant to Toronto in those first 20 minutes. And one of the questions I asked John about after the game was how much they needed that Davy Flores goal in order to have the confidence that they needed to go on and push Cincinnati. I thought that first 20 minutes, Cincinnati was playing their game and Toronto were not quite themselves. And a big part of that was not having Fede as that relief valve, that driving force that he's been from that wingback position. And so it would have made a big difference on the night. It's impossible to say whether it would have, resulted in the game changing. But I think it's just a reminder that we're 15 games into the season. Toronto's had more injuries than most teams should have through this much of the season, and there's a lot of games to come. We're going to play most of them in the next 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is before Leagues Cups comes. So not a whole lot of time to really find that top form and put that whole band together. But I think on the whole, you've got to feel pretty good about the fact that a lot of the big players have shown what they're capable of in flashes throughout this season. And now the next little spell after this much needed 2-week break that we're going to get at the start of June is going to be about putting that all together and stringing together some results. It's been really spotty from the team this year. I'm just looking up on my schedule again, a couple of wins in a row, a couple of losses in a row, win, loss. The way that you earn yourself a playoff spot in this league is you do what Cincinnati does and you string those results together. They're on a 7 streak right now, and you don't have to win every game, but you can't be losing too many in a short stretch. So, Fede and Lorenzo both playing some of the best football we've seen them play in TFC jerseys. I think if you're any other team in this league, you're going to be concerned about that.
But there's something that Noel mentioned that we should be concerned about. We are over 40 yellow cards already into the season, and we're getting excited about bringing Richie Larea back, who his middle name is Yellow Card. I wrote in the rundown, yikes, and it's in all caps. That could be our undoing. And I agree with Noel. It's been a long time since we've seen heart out of this team. And we should have expected it. John Herdman's Canadian men's national team were also brawlers. They also took a lot of cards, weren't afraid to get carded. That being said, we're seeing the consequence of this thing, and I wonder, is it simply that we're taking too many cards for dissension? You know, Berna's sort of regular stoppage time yellow card that he's just accumulating suspensions at this point. What's the answer here? Because I don't think that's sustainable. I think that that's a stat that gives me a lot of pause and a lot of worry moving into the back half of the season and a presumed playoff run. Noel, do you wanna field this for a second? Well,
I looked this up the other day, and out of our last 9 yellow cards, I think 6 of them were for dissent. So it's, you know, Lorenzo's last 2, Fede's last 3 are all about dissent, right? And I think we love the passion, we love the energy, but we just have to be a little bit smarter. And I think the problem is we go charging at the referee at full steam, 100 miles an hour. And I think that is part of why their reaction is to quickly whip the card out, and it's, you know, it ends the conversation. I think we have that issue. You know, their frustration, teams are trying to get under our skin, and we take the bait a little bit sometimes. So I think that's where I don't mind getting into it. I don't mind taking a yellow card for, you know, just if someone's crunched one of our players and you go in and take care of it. That's, you know, that's the old Roy Keane mentality, right? You own, protect your own. You do the right thing by your own. I think for me, it's just when we go charging at the referee, you're asking for that yellow, and we just been asking for it too much lately. And I think that's the problem I have.
Yeah.
I want the energy. I want the passion, but we've got to do it in a controlled, measured way, because it's too much, right? Do you know what I mean? We're
talking about
we're going to miss playoff games potentially.
Yeah. Well, not just that. I mean, you know, could Berna have been the difference? You said it yourself earlier in the show. Davy Flores getting taken off created a giant gulf in midfield, and he was taken off because he was on a yellow, and he was very close to getting the red. And I think it was a presumptive substitution. So James, let's do an internet health check. Am I staring at James? James, are you there? Cool. All right. Let's have your answer. Maybe. I don't know if we just lost you again. It's like Blair Witch over there. I'm so afraid. Okay. Let's go. What's up, buddy?
I think I'm here.
Yeah. I got you. I can hear you now.
I mean, it's that fine line. And you want the passion, as you both have said. You want the guys to be engaged and energetic, but you have to know when to just pull back a little bit. And I sometimes think that you don't get the one without the other, and this is just something that you sort of have to live with. At least for the time being, when you're really trying to push the standards and you're really trying to find that next level. Maybe it's a little bit different when things are ticking over nicely and guys don't feel like they have to be pushing those. John would call them pushing, you know, past the razor's edge, where you're kind of in that danger zone and you're liable to go a little bit. Yeah, I want to be a silly type of final list.
All right. I kind of know when I'm licked, I think. That was some insight. I mean, just to give Grossi his flowers, like, that was a really well measured take. It must be said, you know, and that's why I like bringing Grossi, or the ghost of James Grossi in this case, into these pods, because he always brings the well-rounded, measured take. I mean, this is not my first rodeo with Grossi, although I'm probably going to give him an internet booster next time. You know, and I think we needed to hear it. I don't want to speak for James, but I do. I think we needed to hear it. We needed to hear from a source in the club, you know, that according to Mikey Singh isn't as important as Molinaro and Neil Davidson, but I think he's just as important. Yes, Mikey Singh, that was a shot. I think it was important to get that insight. There's the man himself. Maybe he can speak for himself. Quick, before your internet dies, do you have any final words? Come on, get it all out in 10 seconds, James Grossi.
No, just thanks for having me on, and sorry about the technical complications.
No worries, buddy.
It's always good to chat a little bit, and I think it's going to be a fun season this year. I think I'll leave it at that.
I don't disagree. And again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a ringer. Thanks for bringing the typical well-rounded, measured takes to combat our insanity, especially after the track meet that we just experienced. I think I was saying this, I think it's really important to get somebody who's got their finger on the pulse of the club, which goes without saying, but, who's been here for all of it and can sort of give us that background. It's not so bad, and you do have to suffer through this, and maybe you're going to get 80 yellow cards, but you are also not going to get 23 points and a wooden spoon, right? So it's about what you want, and we all started this season with very diminished expectations. So I do think we're being a bit greedy now, because suddenly we're like, oh my god, it's MLS Cup time, let's plan the parade, and I appreciate we're not there yet. And just hearing it that we're not there yet, I think bodes really well and sort of helps us accept, my biggest takeaway, James, is something that should be common knowledge that you sort of tossed out off the cuff, which is there is no muscle memory for this team. We keep saying, well, remember what it was like in 2017, but that team's long gone, man. Like front and back office, that team's long gone. The muscle memory that this team has shall never be named. Their muscle memory is terrible, right? So they're basically, building new muscle memory while ignoring the bad habits that have been built. And that might mean a bunch of yellow cards because the passion came back with a vengeance, right? So
we can't rule out that setting a new yellow cards record is another one of those goals that Herman's lined up for the
I was just going to say that. I guarantee Herman's got that record somewhere on the board. Let's just not get the red card record. I think actually Cincinnati actually.
Oh my goodness! my goodness! That's pretty
funny. I do agree. I do think that we look at it and go, we're picking it. We're picking at something, but it's just a concern because you don't want to see the best players not available due to ill discipline. But I also think all I wanted last year, all I asked for was 100% effort, heart, and proof to the people that are paying good money in difficult times to get entertained and to be entertained. I'm entertained. Holy crap, were we entertained on the weekend. It's a great game. It was backwards and forwards. It's a belter. And I'm far going to remember that game than some dreary 1-0 win or 2-0 win or, the St. Laurent 8-1 will be a footnote somewhere on a thing. Those are the games that you kind of learn from. And we need more of those games where we learn. And we learn how to win and we learn how to fight back. I think the biggest thing that I got from the game last week was at the end of it, when we just conceded that fourth goal, it's like a dagger, right? It's going down. I just looked at Insigne in the middle, trying to G everybody up and then watching them go again. And I can't say this enough. Like just the fact that, that fourth equalizer was offside, but the noise and the volume in BMO when that thing went in was, I missed that. I missed that every single day. And we got that back. So I'll take some yellow cards. I'll take some dodgy refereeing and I'll take some other things because we need that as a fan base. We need that as supporters, as fans. We need that energy because that's what keeps you coming back, right? That's what keeps you driving forward and keeps seeing this team growing. And I'd rather somebody get absolutely clattered and cleaned out and take a yellow card for the team than just, someone pulling out of a tackle. Right, I still have the Mabika thing in my head. From
the Amy Mabika special. Yep, all about that.
That's the stuff that drives me crazy. All I ever ask for is sometimes you just want some passion, some heart, and commitment to the people that are trying, and this fan base that gives so much and does a lot of things. Right, and you know what? It's a 4-3 loss. It was helter skelter. It was end to end. It was chaotic, and it probably was the best game in MLS for the season. And I would
certainly made the MLS mothership. I think every last columnist put it top of the pops on their rundown for the week. I would say it was on MLS Wrap Up, but I couldn't find it on Apple TV. I honestly struggled with it for about 20 minutes, trying, like, is there a new episode of MLS Wrap Up? I don't know. I keep watching one from April. It keeps auto switching me to one from April. And then I just gave up, and I honestly don't care if there was an MLS Wrap Up anymore, which is the worst thing you can say for trying to watch a show on a platform. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I am going to turn my attention to my cold read now, which goes a little something like this. Thank you for tuning in to another Toronto Till I Die episode. Follow us on Instagram if you haven't already. The username is at TTID Show, or search Toronto Till I Die to find us. Plus, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us some 5-star ratings with some witty copy on all the socials and podcatchers. I literally read every one because I'm a dangerous narcissist and they give me the sweetest of dopamine hits. For Noel Allen, James Grossi, and I guess Michael Singh and Michael Newell, I've been Jeffrey P. Nesker, and this has been Toronto Till I Die. God, this is difficult multitasking. See you next week, and cheers, everybody.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.